Hera, daughter of Helm, I, Wolf, seek your hand in marriage.
You will live to regret this, old man. You will pay for this with your life. Fire!
There's so many of them.
Riders of the Mark! Brothers of Rohan!
You know nothing of war.
I'm the fastest rider you have.
I saw that going differently in my mind.
Hi there everyone, Lars here with a special review and analysis for the War of the Rohirrim trailer, as well as my thoughts on adaptations of Tolkien's works. Brought to you by Camille's Harem, not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers. Because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends. Now, not too long ago, I released a video talking about my excitement for the War of the Rohirrim, and we finally have two separate trailers to have a look at. One is for all of us English speakers, and then one made for Japan. And I gotta say, the Japanese trailer is way superior, at least in my personal opinion, to the American one. And the reason for that is because the Japanese trailer actually leans more into the story that we know of for Helm Hammerhand. However, in both cases, it's very clear that we're not getting Helm Hammerhand's story, but we're getting his daughter's, Hera. Now, his daughter was never named in Tolkien's work, which is one of those things that people are going to say, see, Tolkien, he was a blasphemous sexist who would not name women unless they somehow romantically fit into his stories. Oh, what a bunch of poo. Go ahead and read The Lay of Beren and Luthien, and then we can come back and talk. But for now, let's talk about what is clearly here in these trailers, first of which being a very clear connection to Warner Brothers and New Line Cinema's work on the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings trilogies. They want you to know that this movie is in line with those movies as opposed to the Rings of Power, which is filthy fan fiction. Yet when we look at these trailers right here, it's very clear that there's a lot of fan fiction work going on here as well. Right off the bat, this is not the story of Helm Hammerhand defending against the Dunlington raids into Edoras and then against Helm's Deep. And the particular emphasis on his daughter, making her basically Princess Mononoke for the Lord of the Rings, this is completely made out of whole cloth. Now then, that might not necessarily be a bad thing. Let me give two reasons why. Even though I love The Lord of the Rings as it is, I am not completely a purist when it comes to adaptations. My reasoning for that is because if you wanted to properly adapt the Lord of the Rings trilogy, for instance, properly adapt it with all of the amazing moments in the Old Forest, with Tom Bombadil, with the Barrow-wights, with meeting Glorfindel instead of Arwen, and then the long journey through Moria, and a lot of the philosophy and religion within the Two Towers, the Return of the King, Frodo's amazing moment of transfiguration on Mount Doom. Yeah, if you wanted to put all of those things into those movies, you would effectively have to make 6 long-form television series, at least consisting of 10 to 12 episodes, if you want to get it all in there and get it right. Now then, I'm all for that. But most studios and most audiences aren't because of the cost involved, either in the production or in the amount of time that you'd have to dedicate to watching all of that. Now, again, as a huge Lord of the Rings fan, I would absolutely go for that kind of stuff. But understanding that adaptations are what they are, I want to see what they can do interestingly and do well. So, to my 2 points. The very first point is this, is that, look here, sometimes so much gets lost in translation. And looking at the Lord of the Rings trilogy of films done by Peter Jackson, there is so much that is missing from the books. And yet those movies are almost perfect. They're so good. They hold up so well. The dialogue, the acting, the effects, everything is just absolutely beautiful. It tells the story so well. Never mind the fact that there's a lot of lines that are actually swapped between characters that they should never have said. Aragorn is a reluctant hero, whereas in the books, he absolutely is the Chad King who's like, yes, I am here to help save the day. I will reclaim my throne at Gondor, and I will unite all of humanity against evil. And he's an absolutely great hero. Frodo has some really awesome moments of being a hero as well, as opposed to just simply carrying the ring. And I brought this up already, Arwen's not the one that comes to save them on the flight over to Rivendell. It is Glorfindel. And yet, the way that the movies adapted all of these moments works out really, really well. It still tells the story the way that the story ought to be told, but doing some interesting things with the characters, as well as introducing, for instance, Aragorn's love interest in a way that doesn't simply shoehorn her in. So ultimately, a good adaptation is simply a good story, using the materials of the original in tasteful, respectful ways. Would I like to have a completely faithful adaptation to The Lord of the Rings, and especially to the story of Helm Hammerhand? Absolutely. In fact, I'm just going to say right here, right now, that this movie, War of the Rohirrim, is not going to do as well as it could have done if it had been true to the story that Tolkien wrote. And that is such a shame because this movie looks absolutely gorgeous. Now then, my second reasoning for why I'm okay with adaptations is because I think that we have gotten to a point now where there is such toxic backlash to anything that is done new or done differently with source material, thanks to what Hollywood has done by being absolutely disrespectful to so many creators, to so many fans, to so many properties. They have absolutely done that, and that is on Hollywood. Unfortunately, so many of us fans and critics have also then reacted kind of poorly, creating our own echo chambers where we just hear negativity again and again and again, and I don't hear too much positivity. Let me take, for example, the introduction again of Arwen within the Fellowship of the Ring. Glorfindel should be the one to save the hobbits and Aragorn, because he is one of the most awesome warriors within the history of the elves. So it makes total sense that he would be the one to face down all 9 Nazgul and help Frodo escape. But that's not what happens. Instead, it is Arwen. Now then, why do we go that route? Well, because the creators of Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy realized that they also need to bring in some of the female audience that might not have been wholly sold on an all-male story like Lord of the Rings. Plus, also, you want to make sure that you get all of the wives of the nerds to show up, so why not show a little bit more romance? Here we have this beautiful elf Arwen who's going to help Aragorn, and while she has this really awesome moment as a hero, the movies are also very respectful to show that Aragorn is an amazing hero and leader in his own right, in that the two of them are equal partners in this heroic venture and in their love. It is incredibly and beautifully done. Should the Fellowship of the Ring have been released today in 2024, people will be all up in arms saying that they gave Arwen a girl boss moment. And really, when you look back at the Fellowship of the Ring, sure, we can say that this is a girl boss moment, but really, I haven't heard almost no one ever complain about this, because Arwen is not telling Aragorn, oh, you're such a dumb man, you can't do anything right here, let me save the day. No, they have a back and forth about what they ought to do, and she says, look, I'm the fastest rider, and Frodo needs the help of my people, I do not fear the Nazgul, I'm going to go. And then we see her not beating the Nazgul, but literally having to flee for her life, and just by the narrowest of margins crossing the river and getting Frodo to her people, and then the power of Elrond and Gandalf send down the massive flood at her call to then wash away the Nazgul. It is fantastic. But again, because of all the things that Hollywood has done to our favorite shows and to our favorite books and everything in the past almost 10 years now, this amazing bit of adaptation would be seen as just absolutely awful, when it really isn't. So let's give the War of the Rohirrim a chance. Again, I've already said it's not going to do as well as it could have. because it's definitely not being true to what Tolkien wrote. This is basically Princess Mononoke if San did not have Ashitaka there to balance her out. And that's something that I feel is going to also be missing, is that one of the reasons why San is actually such a great character in Princess Mononoke is because she is balanced out by other characters, specifically Ashitaka, who is looking for peace while she's looking for war and vengeance. When we look at Hera, who's really going to balance her out? Her foil is going to be Wolf, but a foil is not a balance to the main lead. As a result, I feel like Hera is just going to come across more as a strong, bull-headed female warrior who is going to do some amazing stuff. These fights look fantastic. But making this her story, with her being able to take on an Oliphant and befriending one of the great eagles and leading her people in a valiant resistance against the Dunlingdons, when it should actually be her father, Helm, who is just smashing people to death with his own bare fists. Yeah, it's going to be really cool looking, but it's not going to be the great story that is the story of Helm Hammerhand. And the sad thing is that even that aside, if we actually look again at what is given to us in the trailer, even the confrontation between Helm Hammerhand and between Freka, which is what starts all of this, as they are arguing about whether or not Helm's daughter should marry Wolf, Helm does something that is just almost unbelievable, where one of his own councilmen and guests within the Golden Hall at Edoras, being Freka, is taken outside, and then Helm kills him in one stroke because, well, Freka did insult the king to his face, which you probably shouldn't do that, and Helm had enough courtesy to not simply outright murder him within his own throne room, but instead take him on outside, saying, we're going to talk together, you and I, and then he just straight up punches him in the face and kills him, which is a completely epic move. But Helm realizes towards his end that his own hubris, his own anger, is what leads his people to war, because he kills Freka at the absolute worst of times, as Gondor is being attacked by the Corsairs and are unable to send aid to Rohan when the Dunlingdons unleash their full fury on Rohan, along with the help of all of their different allies from the east, thereby allowing them to overrun Edoras. The thing is that within the Japanese trailer, we actually get a lot of those details, and it works out really, really well. In the American trailer, it's all just about Hera, and it looks like absolute fan fiction. From what I can tell, when we combine both these trailers together, there's going to be enough of Helm Hammerhand's story here to placate a lot of the people who understand the story, who have read it, who have loved it, at least to a certain degree. They might not be entirely won over, because again, this seems to be presented as purely Hera's story. So what I'm going to do, this seems like a bunch of waffling back and forth, and I do apologize. Right, here's me just getting out all of my thoughts and feelings on this matter. What I'm going to say is this: without even needing to yet see the movie, the trailer alone already lets us know, from both the Japanese trailer and also from the American trailer, that this is not the story of Helm Hammerhand. This is the story of a fanfic creation, being Hera, using the trappings of the story of Helm and the first siege of Helm's Deep. When we look at canon accuracy, when I finally do get a chance to watch this movie, I will be very bluntly honest and just say, look, these are all the things that it gets wrong. This is not a canon accurate movie at all. The question is it a good story? Now, from what I can tell, it looks like we're actually going to get a good story. At least I hope so. I think I can be okay with that. I am sad that this is not Helm Hammerhand's story. That is a bit of a blow to me as a Tolkien fan, but if it's a good story, I will praise it. If it is a good story, I will take good writing advice from it. If it's a bad story, I will definitely take some good writing advice from it in order to pass it on to you. As a result, I'm actually still very excited to see this movie. However, let's let it be known that, again, I do not think that this movie will be as successful as it could have been if it had been completely respectful to and adherent to the lore that Tolkien himself created. This is a problem that we continue to see again and again and again, that people do not respect the canon of the stories that they're working with, either within their own stories or within other people's stories. And when you disrespect the canon, when you go against the canon, when you insert more of your own material into a story that's already been fully fleshed out, what you end up doing is you create a convoluted mess. And so that's going to be the goal for the War of the Rohirrim. Can they somehow create a coherent, beautiful, well-told story when they are interposing so much of their own content on an already well-written story? That is the challenge. If they can pull it off, the War of the Rohirrim might just be a template for Hollywood going forward. But if they fail, it will be a massive blight on the legacy of Warner Brothers and of the Lord of the Rings adaptations. Never mind the Rings of Power. And really, on that note, I'm going to be taking that exact same way of critiquing and evaluating any adaptation for Middle-earth to Season 2 of the Rings of Power. I'm going to be looking at how it does canonically, how much do they go against the canon, and how badly does that destroy the story. But as its own independent story, how well does it do? The big question is, have the writers learned anything from Season 1? And I'm hearing a lot of people say no. Well, let's have a look and see. Now that, if you want to know my thoughts and feelings on the Rings of Power, there are a bunch of videos that I've already done. I will link some of them so that way you can go and check them out. Because, oh boy, I definitely had feelings about these, and I intend to express all of mine very clearly, very succinctly, at least as succinctly as I possibly can, for these long, abominable episodes. I will do my absolute best as we come to the Rings of Power this week. Oh boy. Things are beginning to get crazy in the world of the Tolkien fan base. And I'm excited still at the same time to see where this all goes. So, enough of my waffling about. Let's get ready for all of these adaptations of Tolkien's work, whether we wanted them or not, because, well, this is just the way that Hollywood is going. But if you actually want to see what some people have been doing to really push back against this tide of horrible adaptations and just silly storytelling, then might I suggest that you check out Murder Drones? It just concluded, and this seems to be the cure to everything that Hollywood has done. Or if you want to read an independent author's work, then I suggest you check out some of my own books, where I definitely step away from all of the craziness that we've recently been fed in the past 10 years. I think you'll really enjoy some of the stuff that I have to offer. But all of that being said, thank you so much for dropping by here and joining us on this incredible adventure that we call writing. And until the next video, y'all, tschüss.